Well, hello, my name is Zach Stiefel, and welcome back to the Church Street Podcast. This is the podcast of First Grapevine Methodist Church, and we are excited to be with you today. And what we're going to do today is we're going to have a very fun conversation with my friend, the contemporary worship leader here at First Methodist Grapevine. His name is Gary Edwards, and Gary has a great story to tell, and I'm excited for him to get to tell you all about it. So, Gary, why don't you say hi and tell us how you're doing today?
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. This is fun. This is fun. I get a chance to have a conversation with some folk that I love. So this is good. This is good stuff.
I love it. Well, how about we just start from the very beginning? Where'd you grow up, and how did you end up in Texas?
Okay, to make that very long story short, I don't like winters. So
says the man with a Detroit hat on, you know?
Listen, I don't like winters, but I love my teams that play in the winter. But no, the high school that I graduated from is called Pine Forge Academy in Pennsylvania. I went there for 1 year for my senior year. It is a performing arts academy, and I begged my mother if I could attend that school to help what I thought would end up being my purpose, which one out of a million times I was right against my mom.
I've met your mom. That feels right.
Yeah, it feels pretty right. And she let me go home. My dad let me go. And from there, I was told there were several universities, because I did vocal performance. So I was there. There were several universities that were available. And I kind of went against the grain. The one that everyone wanted me to go to was Oakwood University with the Aeolians, the world famous Aeolians. And I was like, I want to do something different. And I ended up going to Texas to a school called Southwestern Adventist University. And
you did 1 year at my alma mater, right? You did 1 year
at North
Texas.
Year at UNT after that. And I just kind of liked it. I liked the idea of having 2 seasons. I don't know. I just kind of cut my teeth here and got my feet wet and haven't really looked back since. Michigan will always be home, always. But Texas isn't too bad for a second place to lay my head. So,
how long have you been here?
I've been here since 2009, but I've been living here since about 2013. So.
That's awesome. And along the way, you met your wife.
Yes, that's the most important reason why Texas is a great place. I met my wife. I was attending a church at the time called Dallas City Temple, and she was the children's ministry director. And I was a young buck trying to get on the praise and worship team. And when you are at the kind of the bottom of the totem pole, you get asked to do a bunch of different stuff. And so I was asked to help out the children's ministry choir. And that's kind of where we got our bond. I mean, we had mutual friends, but I wasn't a hometown kid. So being able to work with her in that capacity really, we got to really know each other and shared a common passion for helping kids. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Gary, we met in March of 2022. And
yes,
that was a God thing for sure. And
1,000%.
for our listeners, it worked out that I called Gary at one point for a job interview, and I hung up the phone. I was like, I really like this guy. Like, it was an instant connection, and we've had an opportunity to work together really closely since then. So tell us how you got into even leading contemporary worship.
So to go back just a little bit, my church growing up was a mix. It was definitely traditional, but it was a mixture of traditional and contemporary. There was a gentleman by the name of Kevin Dokes who ran who's no longer with us, but he ran the young adult choir, which my parents were in, and a couple other people. And he brought this sense of contemporary style of gospel worship. My home church's hymns and organs and no drums and all the things that a regular traditional church would be. But Kevin Dokes came into the light, and he changed everything. We started doing artists like John P. Key, and at the time Kirk Franklin, who was just coming out, who's from Fort Worth, Texas, and just a bunch of different stuff. And I loved it. Choir rehearsal was the greatest place on the planet for me, because it was like, man, all right, yeah, we get to do stuff. And so that started there, and he was a great mentor to me up until the time he passed. But when I got to Pine Forge was kind of the first time that I spread my wings a little bit as far as leading worship. My grandmother, who I attribute all of my vocal success, or whatever you would call that, to, taught me as much as she could. But then when I got to Pine Forge, I really, really got my feet wet. That was the first time I had led praise and worship with a group. It's also the first time I ever led praise and worship with a live band. My grandmother believed in basically teaching me how to do spacing and teaching me how to work within the confinements of what most people call an accompaniment track would do. And so, accompaniment track, you have 3 minutes and 45 seconds. You can't stretch that. So how do you make the audience feel like it's been stretched? How do you give them this false sense of time? It's all about your placement, your timing, when you say something, how you say something, how you interact. Is this riff going to go there? Is this riff going to go there or here? And so taking all of that knowledge and then placing it with free range. Now I have a pianist where he can go where I want to go. Oh man. So it took a little while to get used to, but all of those things that she taught me when I was a kid kind of came to light, and I quickly became decent at it because I would pick and choose. I would map it. I'd do what I now call intellectual singing. I would just map it and make sure that, okay, if this is a break, you don't want to just have dead space. Okay, teach the audience a part, or give them an option, or give them a motive to do in this moment. Or if there's a high-powered situation that everyone should be singing, then maybe right before the song, you teach them or talk about that one chorus line. So it's just little things that, from a detailed standpoint, she would talk about, but it wouldn't be from the standpoint of leading a congregation, more so leading a song. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So kind of the heart behind our podcast is, and this is from Pastor Grant, what he says is, I want people to get a behind the curtains look at the conversations that we have.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things about the relationship that you and I have, is that we have deep conversations and we have not deep conversations. But it's very easy for the Lord to step in, and we have these really deep theological conversations. And so for our listeners, I would love to hear your favorite, whether it's Bible story or character in the Bible, and kind of why.
Yeah. It's varied over the years. You get older and you realize, I'm not him. I'm him, or I'm not her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And but right now, currently, my favorite Bible story to kind of reflect into is about the rich young ruler.
Okay.
And it's a story that, as a kid, I just thought Jesus was super mean. I was like, why? The brother was just trying to donate some dollars, man. Like, like, why are you mad? Because it doesn't really give context. It was like, hey, friends, I got this. I want to help the ministry. And Jesus was like, yeah, so sell all you have and come follow me.
Yeah.
By the way, what happened to Thomas last week? It was like, whoa, what? And so as I got older, you begin to read a little bit more, and life starts to happen. You realize that in that moment, outside of, to me, the thief on the cross was the most sincere, straight and to the point, I really love you moment that I believe happened in the Word of God. And it's basically, to me, because he didn't, a lot of people needed walk on water Jesus.
Yeah.
A lot of people needed feed 5,000 Jesus. A lot of people needed spit in dirt, put it in your eyes, now you can see Jesus. There were very few people who really understood and believed that he was who he was. It's his first sermon, they tried to kill him because he said, "Hey, the guy you were looking for,
Yeah.
ta-da,
That's me."
you know, and here's this guy who, you know, you figure before he sees what we look like physically, I just believe that God looks directly inward.
Yeah.
And so you can almost feel in the story, Jesus probably knew he was coming, probably knew he was in the room. And as he's approaching, he's looking at his heart like, oh, he's right there.
Yeah.
He's right there. He just doesn't see it. CeCe Winans has a song called "He's Not on His Knees Yet," and I love that record as it's contested to this particular song. It's this disguise of where I am, but not really being forthtelling of where I need to be.
Yeah.
You know, and so you know they have this conversation, and at first glance you think, okay, God, he's just wanting to help. But you realize later on that no, he's meeting him exactly where he needs to be. All this guy needed to do was realize there's nothing earthly possession-wise that I need from you. What I really want is just you. Mm-hmm. One, not a big flex, but a small one. I own everything you got. Yeah. Two, I created everything that you think you got.
Yeah.
But three, if you would just realize that none of that matters as it pertains to where it is that I want you to be, which is when I return again in my kingdom.
Yeah.
And that speaks to me on a high level because I feel like today we have everything at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. And as it pertains to church, whether you're doing lead and worship or whatever, you feel like you have something that, God didn't need what you got. He's God all by himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't need this church. He doesn't need me. He doesn't need anyone else. He could do whatever he wanted to, whenever he wanted to. But I think it's the greatest joy that he allows us to be a help, to be an instrument. And I think sometimes we can get too big. I'll just speak for myself. I can get too big for my britches and say, "Oh God, I can donate this," and God is like, "No, if you just give me your heart, I'd work it out."
Yeah.
You know, you're so focused on other things. You know.
Yeah, it's this idea of, I think I've got everything that I've got everything that I want, but Jesus is saying, "But I'm everything you need."
Exactly, 1,000%. Which is why I love that story.
Yeah, and I have a few thoughts here. One, I had a guess of who you were going to say this answer to be, and I was wrong. I've heard you talk about the story of Naaman before very beautifully and eloquently, so that was my guess of who you were going to say. I was incorrect. But if I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, you wrote a song about the rich young ruler.
I did.
Is there a lyric from that stands out that you would say speaks to this?
Man, you going into the files that people don't know nothing about.
Sorry, that wasn't on the spot.
No, it was a very on the spot answer. I not necessarily a lyric that I can remember offhand because that song was for someone, so I haven't really looked at it in a minute. But the gist of the song was basically, you know, come all ye heavy burden and laden, and just give to God what it is that you are, not what you have, but who you are.
Yeah.
And God will work out the rest. I think I'm in a season right now in my life to where, you know, mid-30s is weird. It's a weird space because like you understand that it's now apparent. I was stupid in my 20s. I'm almost uneducated, but
it gets worse as you get older. I'm just letting you know that.
You know?
Just letting you know that.
And then you get to your mid 30s and you go, I have to be an adult. And it don't always work out that way. Sometimes, you know, you find yourself on a Friday evening when you probably should be doing stuff, playing video games, you know. That's not always the adult thing to do.
Not always.
Real quick question, and that is, what platform do you use? We had to know that. Grant always asks that.
For video games?
For video games.
I'm a PlayStation guy. I had an Xbox for a very long time. But I started with PlayStation. I think I'm going to end with PlayStation.
Are you on a 4 or a 5, or where are you?
Right now I'm on a 4 because the way my bank account is set up. And the fact that I'm married, I don't always get a chance to just, hey, friends, I'm just about $500 worth of video games that you probably not going to play with. But
The way my bank account is set up.
that's
I love
an
it.
ode to Kevin Hart there. I got check-ins and the savings, and I got to move my money from my check-in to my savings. It's just a lot. I just leave it alone. But
Oh, that's funny. Paul, how about you? Favorite Bible story character?
Basically, I had to take a lot of classes. I have this thing in the United Methodist Church. It was called Certification in Youth Ministry. And one of the professors that I was underneath for that taught us about the blick. And we all kind of go, a blick? And a blick is a word, a phrase, a Bible verse, and a Bible story that kind of is your philosophy, your theology. And mine is a garden. And so that would be the, I would say 2 places, and that would be the Garden of Eden, because there's definitely redemption there, okay? But also basically the sowing of the seeds.
Yeah.
And because as a youth director, I used to throw out seeds all the time, and you don't know if those seeds are going to ever grow up. And one of the nice things about working here, as the AV person now, not as a youth director, is getting to see a lot of those people that I had as youth as adults. And it's amazing. It's great. And I feel that those seeds have come up.
Yeah, that's really cool.
that's awesome.
I love that. That the garden is your thing.
Yeah, the garden.
Like I said, Gary and I have these conversations that can go anywhere, and one of the ones we've had just recently was about a dream for doing a Bible study that leads into a worship night that we would want to call the Seeds of Eden, and how God is continuing to plant that idea of home and perfection and no more tears and no more pain, all of that still within us, and God's still planting it. The question is, are we willing to water it?
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Could be fun. Y'all stay tuned.
Real
It
fun,
might
yes.
happen.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
For me, I think the story that I continue to come back to, at least right now, is when the ruler Jairus, the high priest, or the guy who works in the temple, rather, comes to Jesus and says, hey, my daughter's sick. I need you to come with me and heal her. And so Jesus says, okay, let's go. He's just healed the Gerasene demoniac, so the throwing the demons into the pigs story, and then he goes to the other side, and he's met on the other side of the Sea of Galilee by this guy who probably didn't know or trust or really like Jesus all that much, but he was down to his, I need something, and I need somebody, and maybe that can be you. And so Jesus says, okay, let's go. And then that story is, it's essentially a sandwich. You see Jairus, and then you see the woman who comes and touches the hem of Jesus's robe, and then it ends with Jairus. And I really love that because I think, if you remember, they are walking to Jairus' house. This woman comes up and she touches Jesus' robe, and he stops in his tracks and he looks around and he says, who touched my robe? And she had the courage to say, well, it was me. And he said, your faith has made you well. And when I read that, I can almost feel in that moment that Jairus is like, oh, this might actually work. Like this, I really think this guy can do it.
Yeah.
Like, this is what can happen. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Israel, and this was in January of 2020, so right before the world went crazy and shut down and all of that. And so my favorite stop on this tour was in Magdala. Have you been to Magdala?
I have not.
It's one of the newer spots that they've excavated, and it is a beautiful place, but they have this chapel in the basement of the museum, and it's called the Celebration Chapel. And in it has this really pretty picture of, it's huge, a mural, but all you see is Jesus's feet and this woman touching the robe, and there's like a spark coming off of it. And the priest who gave us the tour when we were there, he asked in that moment, he said, is there anybody here who's praying for somebody? And of course, everybody raises their hand, and he called one of the women in the group up, and he said, "Hey, give me your phone." And she gave it to him. He said, "Just stand right here and put your hand like this." And so she was mimicking and imitating the picture. And so, imitating and mimicking the mural. And so he takes a picture of it and he hands it to her. He says, "Whoever you're praying for, send this to them and say, you just touched Jesus' robe for them." It's like, oh, that's pretty good. So that's the story that I continue to come back to. And then, of course, they get to Jairus' house and Jesus goes in and says, "Well, she's just sleeping, y'all," and then walks away. He's like, "Oh, that's it. We're done." But I really love that story. That's the one that speaks to me.
Yeah. That's a good one.
While we're paused for a second here, I just want to say that the things that you are doing in contemporary are amazing.
Oh, man, thank you very much.
I don't want to brag on him too much because we don't want him to have too big a head. But
I'll brag on him. I'm fine with
basically, what was it that Josh said? All we had to do was fire Josh from the contemporary, and we can make a bigger service in there, you know. And it's definitely. I mean, we've seen almost a 2 times growth. Mm-hmm. Since that has happened.
Yeah, it's been a really fun season, and
yes.
that's one of my favorite things about getting to do this alongside you, Gary. And I've talked about this, but there is what you bring to the table is skill. Yes, you have all the talent in the world, but your spirit outmatches that, and it is felt from everybody in the room.
Oh, praise God, man.
And I don't want to just say that it's all Gary, because you happen to be in there too. So,
and not just me. It's people like Colin,
or
Zuzart, MD, that makes my job thousands of times easy. The things that he does behind the scenes, I really appreciate him and the rest of the crew, the volunteers. It's a beautiful marriage, and I have to say this about Josh. I've done this a long time. Very rare do you get who you're succeeding to be so kind, so giving of time, so giving of information. I don't think this would go as smoothly without Josh saying, "Here's everything you need. Mm-hmm. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. This is where." In basketball, which I played in high school, usually the point guard or the guy who handles the ball the most asks the centers or whoever's moving, in a motion offense or whatever, "Where do you want the ball?" Mm-hmm. This is where Josh gave me every position of where they wanted the ball. And I so appreciate that to the umpteenth degree, because it doesn't, you get a new person in. He was doing this for 8 years? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You get a new person in, man, that's not easy. And the main person, that's like, it's like Luka leaving the match.
It's too soon, man. They played last night.
Hey, man. But seriously, it's like, man, who's the new alpha?
Yeah.
He's the alpha dog. So how does this work? Mm-hmm. And listen, it don't work all the time.
Yeah.
You find out real fast, okay, this ain't it. And you can either go really miserably or really great. So I'm just thanking the Lord that through those that he's used and the provisions that he's had, it's going decent.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun so far, and I don't think we're done yet.
No, they're not one bit. Just getting started.
Yeah. So, Gary, what would you say from a musical standpoint, from what you've done, because you've got a really good resume, honestly, from people that you've worked with, churches that you've been serving at, even from everything. You've got a really good music resume. What would you say you're most proud of?
That's wow. that's a really, really, man. One moment in particular sticks out. It was my blind audition for The Voice. And they asked me, I was able to fly out my family members for that. And you don't know if you're going to make the show or not. They just, fly your people out. So they asked me, was there anyone in your life that got you to this moment? First person I thought of was my grandmother, mm-hmm. who I affectionately call Mama B. And, not all the time do you get to real time celebrate and give flowers to the people. And in my brain, I was like, I just said, Mama B. And I said, and she's here. And they said, well, can she come to the stage? And in front of millions, I got to show off to the world the person who created what it is that you hear Sunday mornings, what it is that you see on whatever show that I've been on, or what like she is, without a shadow of a doubt, the foundation that created this house.
Yeah.
What season and what year was that, or do you remember?
This is 2017, 2018-ish, and season 14.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think you can still see those old seasons.
I believe so, yes. I want to say Hulu has the seasons, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I haven't watched a single episode of when I was on that show. And to be quite frank, I never watched it prior.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story of how I even got there. But
one you can share?
Yeah, of course. But going back to finish to answer your question, that's probably my proudest moment, being able to real time give her flowers and say thank you.
Yeah.
And show the world that, if I ever become anybody special outside of this moment, this is why,
Yeah. And I didn't know that part of your audition story, but the part that I do know is that you stood on your principle.
Yeah.
That in the sense of they wanted you to sing, I don't remember what song it was, but they wanted you to sing a song and you would have crushed it. But you said, I'm a church singer. I've got people who follow me and all of that kind of stuff.
That was the tough one. So they wanted me to do Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye. And I said, okay, classic, right. But next week, I'm going to go home and do Alpha and Omega by Israel. That ain't going to work. So that ain't going to work. I can't be talking about, getting down and then, it ain't going to work. So on those shows like that, and for anybody who's trying to do those shows, which if you have a plan, I recommend it. But they try to give you a false sense of how much power you do actually have to speak up for yourself, because they have an agenda. This show is not really about you making it and having talent. If I'm being frank, the show is about making money. And so they're going to do the best thing to put their talent in a situation to make the best dollar, and hey, any successful business would do that.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to go that route, and nor did I want to be classified as that kind of artist. And so I recommended another very popular song by the same artist, which is What's Going On. Mm-hmm. And they allowed me to do a little bit of arranging in that, and it worked out just fine. And so I'll always remember that as a moment where I was able to, stand on my own 2 feet and trust in God, because that's scary, man, to tell the executive producer, hey, friend, I'm not doing that. So
which it's so admirable that you would have the courage to do it, but that the Lord would be nudging you in that way and you listened.
No, it was I mean, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm doing better with saying, oh, thank you. Versus going, it's not. But yeah, it was it's a push that back to my parents and my grandmother and just saying, look, if God be for you, who really can be against you?
Yeah.
If you just trust and believe. So
yeah.
It was fun. It was fun. To go back to what you were saying, the story of how I got on The Voice, it was a dare from my brother. It was a bet that I lost. And it's funny. And I lost bad. I ain't never lost like this before. And
yeah, I was gonna say.
My younger brother. Yeah, I have a younger brother, Aaron. He's a super smartest guy that I know. Really, really cool. But he was like, hey, man, what are you doing with your music at the time? And I was like, well, I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do that. He was like, well, that's not working, clearly.
The way that only a little brother can.
Yeah, only the way a little brother can, which I have we have a whole history, me and him there. And I'll just stop. So when we were kids, our house is a basketball family. And so amateur ball is, of course, JUCO or D3, D2, D1. These are college things, or, overseas. Mm-hmm. So when I would sing at church, he would grade me via the amateur positions. So I'd come off of stage. I go, how'd I do? I had D2. How'd I do? JUCO. That was real bad. You shouldn't do this song this week, the next time. Or if I did really good, first round draft pick, lottery, top 13.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of that was, I think, like when I was from like 10 to like 16 or so. I come off stage and D1, JUCO. You just didn't make the league. You gotta be walk on this week. It's all types of stuff. That was like our little thing. But so yeah, he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Man, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know what I'm doing." And he was like, "You should do one of these TV shows." And I was like, "You know how I feel about that." And he was like, "Yeah, but you ain't got nothing planned, brother. So let's figure out one of these shows." And so I was like, "Nah." He was like, "I'll tell you what. I played for it." And we played 2K. Mm-hmm. You win. If I win. He would owe me something. But if he won, I gotta go try out. Kicked my butt, and I mean,
he was D1 that day.
Man, I'm talking about first round draft pick, top 13 lottery, and I honored the bet as we would do back then, and I tried out. I didn't know if I was gonna make it. I went to Austin for an audition. And I promise you, I sat in line for like 6 hours.
Did you think of going away?
Oh, definitely. I was like, no one's gonna know. Who's gonna know? That little meme, or I forget where that was from. Like, who's gonna know? Everyone's gonna know. No. Who's really gonna know? And so I finally got in, and the rest is history. I really believe it was a God thing. If I'm being honest with you, I was so terrified that whole time. I know I didn't do great. Or at least to my standard, and it was just a blessing. It was a blessing.
Being on the show, I've heard some of your stories about some of the people that you've met, or even your Starbucks story.
That's the one I was going to go with. The Starbucks story. So
we're in Starbucks, and this is maybe the first episode has aired, maybe the second, and basically everybody's blind audition has been scene or whatever. So we're at Starbucks. I don't think we're really supposed to be at Starbucks because they really tried to keep us like in our hotel because voice fans are crazy. Like something wrong. Something deeply wrong. They are fanatics. They are just, it don't matter what season, it is voice or die. That's how they treat it. And so they know that, and people know when the show is airing. At that time, I don't know if they still do it, but they were shooting 2 seasons a year.
Okay.
And so it was just bananas in Burbank, California. So, anyways, we're at Starbucks. We order our food, and one of our baristas go, "Hey, y'all are on the Voice," and we were like, "Yeah, thanks." In my brain, I'm going, "It'd be nice if you give us this coffee for free because this per diem ain't a lot." But all right, cool. So. But we got our stuff, and a lot of people started to, you hear the Russians, "Hey, da 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 da, that's such and such," and then by the time we looked up, man, we couldn't move.
Oh man.
And it was, I had never, look, I'm from Inkster / Belleville, Michigan. I don't see a lot of traffic like that. Listen, when you look up and there are people calling you by your government name. Like that is, and it's like, that's the moment I realized, oh, I'm on TV.
Yeah.
And it was super cool because, listen, and this is nothing against church, but if you sing or do whatever in church, it's especially if you've been doing it for a long time, it's almost expected. And so there's not, I'm not going to say not a level of appreciation, but it's kind of just like, oh, that's what he does.
Yeah.
This was the first moment in my life where I felt special about what I had worked for my whole life. Mm-hmm. And that was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Needless to say, we were kind of put on lockdown after that moment because we had to call one of the voice people to come get us. But,
you had to get a ride out of there.
Man, listen, it was tough. I'm not gonna. It was kind of scary. I remember, forget this one girl was like, "Oh my God, I'm their biggest," and she was like in our face, and I was like, "Ma'am, ooh,
let's step back just
step
a
back
hair.
just a little bit. My cup is open. Ooh. You're doing a lot right now, but yeah, it was fun.
All right, you also have to tell us the Paul McCartney.
Yes, so Paul McCartney, we meet Paul McCartney at Chaplin Studios. And it is a moment where I think all of us were trying to figure out, did this just happen? So he was walking out, and he's walking out, and first thing you see is his bodyguard. and you don't know who that is. You know, it could be a football player, we don't know. And then all of a sudden he emerges. It was like the aura was like the light hit. And it was like in the background you kind of sort of heard come together. Like it was weird. It was
like swelling.
Yeah, it was like as soon as the bodyguard left, all you heard was boom 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 doom, boom boom doom, and then he floats out, and you go, oh my! And he was like, "Hey, how y'all doing?" And we just kept saying, "You're Paul McCartney." It was a really fun moment, and he was very kind, and he had one of the prettiest blue Corvettes I've ever seen. So,
one other story before we leave that, and that is the Justin Bieber one.
yes, so Justin was in the.
See, I've heard these stories, so everyone else needs to hear some of these.
Justin is in the same studio, and there's a place where they have like chefs on deck, and they always are making food and cookies, and it's just all this dessert and just stuff because people are there. 9 times out of 10, your favorite album was made over like a course of days, and the studio that they were in was almost a hotel. Mm-hmm. So they're there, for hours, days, weeks, months. Where you're just this is where you live. Anyways, I don't know what he was working on, but we were there late, because when we would record for our singles, we would go to this particular studio. And this particular studio, just to give a little background on it, We Are the World was recorded here. Cool. And so it was, a lot of Led Zeppelin albums were recorded. It's just a very iconic studio. Anyways, and then the Muppet dorms are right across the street. So that's fun. It's like a huge Kermit thing. It's great. So, anyways, that was always fun to just like Kermit's across the street. That's cool. But, so anyways, so Justin is, I guess, in a session, and I sneak over because I'm hungry. It's like midnight. I sneak over to the little eatery place, and I'm grabbing a cookie, and someone says, "You gonna eat that?" And I go, "Yeah," because I'm thinking it's one of my castmates. Turn around, and I go, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, I'm good. Seriously, you gonna eat that?" "Yes, I am. I'm sorry."
But because you're Justin Bieber, you don't get my cookie.
Yeah, no, I don't care who you are. Listen, I'm gonna eat this chocolate fudge. But nah, it was cool. It was cool. So you just moments like that. I think either Brandy or Jasmine Sullivan came one of those times, and like I said, you just meet different people. I had an hour-long conversation. This is a real story. I was wandering around the same studio. If you wander, you meet people, literally. Mm-hmm. I was wandering around the same studio. Randy Jackson from The Voice, not The Voice, but American Idol, and longtime music executive, bass player for Mariah Carey, all the things.
Played for Journey for a couple of tours for them. I got to see him live with Journey.
Yes, Randy Jackson, just very well established. He's producing something, but he's in the hallway walking around, and I walk and I see him, and I know exactly who he is. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, I've gone too far. So I'm trying, and he can see it on my face, and I'm worried. He was like, "Oh, you're good, kid, you're good." And he was like, what are you here for?" And I told him what I was there for. He said, "Oh, The Rival." And at the time he had stopped working for Idol. But we talked, and he gave me just some sound advice. And I don't even think we meant to stay out that long, because by the time we were done talking, whoever he was doing, first of all, whoever he was with was super rich, because they walked out with, I've never seen. Have you ever seen Python pants? No. And the only reason why I know it because I asked. I said, I have a level of ignorance that allowed me to ask, and so so I just was like, what is that? And he was like, "Oh, they're Python," and I was like,
"Sure,
yeah." I mean, because that's you. They don't sell that at H&M? No? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it was the whole fit. He had the Python, pants, the Python. It was crazy. So anyways, but we sat and talked for about an hour, and he gave me any question I had about the business, about what to look out for, even about being a person of color. And a lot of times rooms that don't really have people that look like you, how to operate. He was so giving of time. And I never saw him again. It was almost like, poof, Randy Jackson, poof, bye, Randy Jackson.
Yeah.
And I have a picture. He took a picture with me that I keep on my phone often. But yeah, it was a really, really cool time.
That's awesome. So shifting back to the church now.
Yes.
And this can be for our church here or just the overall church. From a worship leader, a music standpoint, what is your biggest hope and dream for the church?
For the church at large, this is beyond where I serve, to truly recognize the time that we're in. A lot of times we can get so caught up about various things, but the reality is probation is closing. And Christ is on the way whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
If you're an avid Bible reader, you can look at various prophecies as it pertains from Daniel to Revelation, even to Isaiah, and you can start to see. I mean, listen, that Nebuchadnezzar statue, if it ain't never been right, it's been right. You know, the powers that be and how, you know, again, no one knows the day nor the hour of Christ's return, but just how things are moving, how things are shaping, who's doing what, why they're doing it. To be mindful and watch and pray is something that is so crucial now.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, churches. I was watching a podcast the other week. And they were saying where the church began to fall is when we started operating like a Fortune 500 company. And you know, he was basically saying from that standpoint, you know, in large companies, you do whatever is necessary to keep the company at a certain place, to keep it afloat. You know, in the house of God, some of those things that you would normally keep to keep the company right, you would really need to throw away.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know, we ought to be quite mindful of the idea of what it is that we're giving people. You know, you think of someone who's coming in for the first time, has really never heard of God, but they've tried everything else, and their hope is completely lost. We don't want to put their hope on flashing lights, smoke, and feel-good sermons. Put their hope on something that is a solid rock, something that won't wash up in the tide, something that's not built in sand, something that you can stand on, not just from a hope standpoint, but from a faith standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, something that doesn't crumble in a storm. And he was like, that's not always the fun, happy-go-lucky, we just had quote unquote church moments. These are moments where you have to tarry with the Lord. You know, some of your favorite Bible characters, none of them had an easy road.
Right.
You know, probably the easiest road was maybe Job, and God let all hell break loose on him, but because he trusted where his faith was. And it's like, are we at a place right now where God can let all hell break loose and trust the fact that we won't waver?
Yeah.
And I that's my real hope, that, you know, if, or really when things hit the fan, are we at a place to where God can say, but have you tried my servant, First Methodist Grapevine? Have you tried my servant Gary? Have you tried my servant Paul? Have you tried my servant Zach? Or wherever you are, and trust that if he allows something to occur, you know that, like the three Hebrew boys said, we're not careful to answer you, King, for our God can deliver us. But if he chooses not to, we will still serve the Lord.
Yeah.
Are you that place? And that's kind of my hope and my dream, and not just for the church in general, but for this church.
Yeah.
To get to a place to where, not just in the contemporary, but traditional or throughout the campus, to where we are known by our faith. We are known by our acts of kindness. We are known by our acts of love. There's a song that says, and they'll know that we are children by our love. To get to that moment, to be more precise, as it pertains to the contemporary service where I serve, my major goal is to create a culture of worship. one that is parallel to the Acts Church.
Yeah.
Where we can feel this presence of God doesn't have to be ushered in by your favorite song. Having church was had throughout the week, and this is the cherry on top.
Yeah.
You're not coming to a place or location to get your fix. No, you're coming to spread the harvest that you've taken up from what you've done throughout the week, and that's easier said than done. Sure. But that is my goal for the contemporary service, and honestly, all the services here.
Yeah.
That is our focal point, to create this culture of worship that is within the heart of God versus the wants and needs of our feel good button.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you could have a cherry on top as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
What artist are you inviting into the contemporary? You've mentioned CC, you've mentioned Kirk Franklin, you've mentioned, and if we had a budget that we could have those people on.
Bank account was set up.
You know, I have a lot of favorites. I love Brandon Lake. Mm-hmm. I love Daryl Walls. I love Phil Wickham. I love I love CC. I love she sings I Speak Jesus, and I cannot think of her name. But she's fantastic.
Yeah.
Last name, Charity Gale. There we go.
That's it.
Charity Gale. Anthony Evans, who's a hometown kid. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, she does The Blessing.
Carrie Job,
who's hometown as well. These are individuals who I think would work very, very well in this service. If I had an all-time budget and I could go, hey guys.
Well, you've already brought in some incredible people for the fact of. Tell us a little bit about Rachel.
Oh, Rachel, yeah, Rachel's great.
Because she has a album coming out about to be.
She does. It's kind of on the low, but yeah, she does. No. Rachel is great. Rachel is a fantastic singer. She is her family is gospel music royalty. Her last name is Hammond, and if you know anything about gospel music, Fred Hammond is the godfather. And I'm not saying that because I work for the man, but I lived through it. The godfather of what we now see and know as contemporary style of worship. He was one of the first that I know of that brought in the whole small group praise team thing and theme, and then the style of music that he was creating birthed people. A lot of people don't know Israel played for Fred before Israel became Israel. Mm-hmm. There's a lot. Marvin Sapp. There's a lot of great people. And what he was able to do at his time in different record labels at Integrity, what he did at Integrity Records, helped build that house. Just Fred is that guy. But that's her family. That's her uncle. And I've been blessed to get to know them over the years. I met Rachel, was it 2.5 maybe years ago? And she's just a joy to be around. She is I tell her all the time, I say, you have more talent in your pinky than I do in my entire body.
The harmonies that y'all were kicking out, and I only got to hear you in rehearsal on Sunday, but y'all were kicking out, and it was Jenny as the third, but oh my goodness, y'all were just killing it during rehearsal. And I'm sure during the service it was even better, but during rehearsal it was amazing. Yeah,
man, it's fun to be able to cultivate all that stuff. I think sometimes certain styles of music doesn't always cause for certain kinds of certain kinds of arrangements. But I like to have fun. I like to have fun. So.
It's cool watching you and Rachel, and you've introduced me to Rachel. I know her from getting to lead alongside both of y'all a handful of times now, but it's really fun to see, like, there's something, the way that you two trust each other when leading is very evident. Okay, I'm getting the 5-minute warning.
Okay, so, cool. 5 minutes.
So that means we're going to go into our time of our pattern of silliness.
Let's do it.
And so what that is it's an opportunity to say, is there a show you're watching? Is there a record you're hitting? What is it that you are, that is kind of keeping you afloat in the midst of everything else at this moment?
No word. It's hot hitters. I am obsessed right now with, and I know obsessed is a common word used right now, but I truly am. I'm obsessed right now with 70s funk music, and I have been on a binge of the Superfly soundtrack for about a month now.
Okay.
And I do this constantly. I pick an era, I pick a one or two artists, and I just deep dive, and I study the record. What made that pop? What made that move?
Are you vinyl? Are you digital? Or what are you?
I'm all. I have vinyl. I got digital. Whatever I can get my hands on. Right now, it is Sly and the Family Stone, Curtis Mayfield, and I dabble in and out between not Earth, Wind and Fire, which I do Earth, Wind and Fire, but the Doobie Brothers and Earth, Wind. Those are kind of the four that are in rotation right now as far as for me. Movies right now, I'm usually a big movie guy, but I've been in my throwback stage, so I'm a Disney fanatic. So like last night, I went to sleep on A Bug's Life. Because I love the soundtrack. Everything is a soundtrack for me. So Randy Newman, God bless you. Once a bug, little bit, it's great. So but yeah, that's kind of it. And then I have absolutely no time, or not no time, but absolutely all the time in the world. I'm a NBA 2K person.
Okay.
So that's what kind of keeps me sane.
Yeah, I love it. Paul, how about yourself?
Well, we watched the Greatest Showman last night. That's what we watched because of the soundtrack. But we have found a new show that we've been watching, and it's on Max, and it's called The Pit.
Okay.
It's Noah Wyle, and basically it's the same character that he had in ER, and he couldn't be Dr. Carter anymore because Michael Crichton's estate said, no, we can't do that. But it's basically the same character.
Yeah.
But you take ER, because we've been watching a little bit of ER also, the old shows, and the pace on The Pit is about 100% faster. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing to watch the difference between what it was almost 30 years ago and what it is now. Same type of show.
Yeah.
But that's our section right now.
Hopefully they stay away from helicopters in the new one. That was the thing in ER, right? And if I remember right, I think it was Jeff Roper recommended The Pit to me too. So that's two, which means I should be paying attention, I guess.
It's good. It's really good. But it's heartbreaking also, so be sure you are in that mindset also.
Cool. I don't know when I'm in the let's get heartbroken mindset, but I'll see what I can do.
And yourself, what are you in?
For me, I'm gonna take a different turn. There are two books that I have right now that I'm really excited about. One is by Henry Cloud, who's a Christian philosopher and an amazing therapist is what he does, but it is a book called Trust. And so it is about building and maintaining and knowing when to offer your trust to people. And I follow a church growth blogger, podcaster, and he said in one of his posts, he said, if I could recommend one book for any seminary student, this is the one that I would do. So I'm reading that and I'm liking it a lot. And then on deck, I have Craig Groeschel's new book, and his preaching style and writing style really works for my mind, and so I'm excited to get into it. It's called The Benefit of Doubt.
That's cool.
So it should be good.
Very good.
We've got a first birthday party coming up this weekend, so that's kind of consuming as well.
Are you going to give the cake and let them devour
she'll
the cake?
She'll do the smash cake for sure, and I don't know, but I think she's going to get into it. I think she's going to go after it.
I think she is too. I think she is too.
Man, well, thank you, Gary, for being here and being a part of this. I don't think this is going to be the last time that we're sitting here having a conversation like this. Paul, thank you for all that you do, making sure that we sound good, look good, and that you even facilitated this happening. So we appreciate you doing all that you do.
Thank you.
And for you, to quote Pastor Grant, our dear listeners, it has been a wonderful blessing and opportunity to be with you, and we cannot wait to see you soon. Y'all have a good one.